One is we did a poster presentation that then went over our new type of capsule, actually, which is very, very exciting. It's called an MEM capsule. Yeah, so it's an emulsion-based matrice, essentially. Fecal transplant capsules have emerged in the literature, and they're very effective. There's a paper by Elizabeth Homan in the JAMA that works very, very well. But capsules are a bit tricky, and they're tricky because usually when you take poop and you put it in a capsule and you freeze it, it's not designed to do that very well. When you put capsules are designed to disintegrate when stomach contents it touches, but when you put stomach contents inside a capsule, it eats itself inside out. And so they're not physically stable. So the capsules in the literature are very physically unstable and they can pop in your mouths, and that's really not that appealing for anybody. So we've been working really, really hard on trying to solve that problem, and some really clever people at OpenBiome and MIT have solved it because they've basically used a long-chain fatty acid to coat the bacteria that allows it to be a solid at room temperature and then a liquid at body temperature. So it's stable, and we know the viability, the bacteria are alive. The physical stability, it doesn't pop, is very, very good. And I think that's a very important win, and it works very well. Now, the other thing is that it's a scalable solution. So the capsules in the literature at this point in time, they're very, very labor intense. It takes people hours and hours and hours to do them. And so, as a small nonprofit that are trying to scale this and have safe access to fecal transplants, we really think scalability is very important, not just an academic exercise, but to really change and affect the lives of patients. And so our role was to try and use a system, and we've developed that's scalable and that's stable, and we've been able to do that. There's this unique regulatory environment for fecal transplants currently, and so it's something called enforcement to discretion. Think of it not like a green light, FDA green light. Think of it like not like a red light. Think of it like a yellow light. It's like proceed with caution. So currently, the FDA allows very thoughtfully on their part, allows fecal transplants to occur for C. difficile not responsive to standard therapy. So if that hadn't have occurred, every time when we want to do a fecal transplant, you would have to do an investigational new drug application. Those are very labor intense, and clinicians don't really have the time or the bandwidth to do that. So the FDA was in a very difficult position, and they were very thoughtful to say, hey, we know patients are benefiting from this, we think, and we don't want patients to suffer until something comes onto market. Why don't we allow this to occur, but recognizing that patients have to have the informed consent, they should be notified as an investigational new drug or therapy, and the clinician needs to go over that in very great detail. And that's allowed fecal transplants to emerge. The key point here that I'm getting to is they're allowing enforcement discretion for all delivery modalities, whether that's a colonoscopy, an enema, a nasoenteric tube, or a capsule. So moving towards encapsulation will continue to work under enforcement discretion. One of the challenges with anytime you swallow a pill is something called aspiration. Aspiration means when the pill goes not into your stomach and down, but also into your lungs. And if you get poop in your lungs, it's a really bad situation. So we've designed the inclusion criteria to be only those that can swallow appropriately. So there's a special placebo pill, just a fun pill that's totally inert that patients should swallow beforehand to make sure they can swallow properly. And if they have any trouble swallowing, then that's a contraindication to going ahead with capsules. They should try another delivery modality. Also, if you have very severe disease, severe complicated disease, capsules would be not the best strategy in this space. And I think there's a couple other medical conditions, that slowing of the gut essentially, that would prevent you from having capsules, and maybe another delivery modality might be better. So they could go through any of the other delivery modalities that we already have. So the most evidence for, and Dr. Kelly is presenting, is FMT by colonoscopy. So they could still go under that procedure. FMT by enema works very effectively. I published some data on that. And FMT by upper delivery, so tubes that kind of go down your nose into your small bowel. One of the really interesting things is that we know that the bacteria in your gut gets impacted by antibiotics. And sometimes we know we're going to get antibiotics, and we're at high risk for certain types of infections, specifically Clostridium difficile. And so the concept behind Personal Biome is that you can bank your own stool if you want, and should you ever get antibiotics and get recurrent Clostridium difficile, instead of using a universal donor, which works very well, you could potentially get back your own stool that you've banked. And so we're piloting that with the Open Biome team and have had some robust response. Dr. Eric Paymer at Sloan Kettering is doing a study with bone marrow transplant patients where they're doing autologous fecal transplants banking, and it's still an ongoing but very, very exciting work, and I think we've taken inspiration from him and the work around knowing when to think about preventative medicine and actually taking the bacteria, storing it away. If you get antibiotics and get C. diff, and again, only if you get recurrent C. difficile, not just haphazardly get your stool back, but specifically if you're getting an infection that we know responds well based on the data to fecal transplants. This allows us an opportunity to get your own stool back. I think we're at the tip of an iceberg, and I think we have the opportunity to do very, very interesting work because we think that the microbiome may have an impact on many, many diseases outside of the GI tract even, which is very exciting. Everything from arthritis to mental health disorders to neuropsychiatric diseases to really the gamut. And Aristotle used to say that disease always starts in the gut, and we're starting to find out that it may actually be the case, and he may be quite wise. He's always been wise, but extra wise, I guess.